It's a tremendous blessing to be here today. I feel I was brought here to tell you how loved you are. The great blessing of having a near-death experience or an out-of-body experience is to awaken you to your expansion and your authentic identity. Let me repeat that you are able to work from your authentic identity after you have had one of these extraordinary experiences. Which leads me to a couple of jokes. I have a girlfriend named Jackie Newroller. She writes for the Yoga Journal. She sent me 2 sheets of jokes, and they were called the Jewish Buddha. Here are a couple of them. Wherever you go, there you are. Except for your luggage. Misfortune in your life is a blessing. Do not ask for perfect health. Do not ask for a perfect life. What would you have to talk about? It's interesting what we do talk about. And it's even more interesting what we identify with in our lives. For me, the quest of the soul integrating with physical form has been one of the greatest journeys of my existences. At the age of 13, when I started high school, I thought that I could not possibly take care of my soul as I entered high school. So I went to the back of Highland Park Library, and there's a beautiful little statue. It's a fountain. It's of a sea lion, and it was spitting water out, and there was a beautiful pool. And I thought, oh, you know, I'm going to be so criticized for 4 years now that I'm going to high school. I think I'll transfer my soul to the little statue, because the statue is made of stone and could take better care of my soul. And I actually thought that. And I did a little ritual to go through the water and transfer the soul into the statue. Now, in my home of origin, creativity was very nurtured. Fine arts, music, painting, acting, all of that was very well supported and loved. But I felt like when I went out into the society, it was much more difficult. I was very sensitive, and it was fine in my home, but it wasn't fine in the culture in general. And you sure it wouldn't be fine for teenagers to be like that. You shouldn't be so sensitive. Kids are going to be mean. So I felt that my soul couldn't take it. Now, I don't know exactly how I made that deduction. By the end of high school, I took my soul back. I did another ritual and took my soul back. But I do know I had enough soul to do a lot of singing and performing and artwork in high school. So not everything got transferred to that little statue. Very much was that a reflection of my journey, that I was too sensitive. So it came out in the fine arts, but it was much later that the true venue for that expression came forward. In the years prior to 1990, I had a number of things go on. I was always interested in various spiritual matters. In the late 1980s, I was regressed by Gregory Paxson, and I discovered a lot of things. Jay, when you hear it. Society was to prophecy. Go at night up to a mountain, and I would prophesy. And the way it was done was through levels of what today we might call collective consciousness. You went to one level, and you stated everything you saw. You pulled yourself up, and you went to the other level, and you stated everything. And so it would go higher and higher to about 12 levels. In that, I saw what was going to happen to the city of Memphis. Memphis stood out. I didn't remember studying Memphis in school. It came to me from the regression. I saw what was happening to China. China was very dominant as a culture right after the peak, and when the culture of Egypt was falling, China came on the scene. But the way of prophecy, that pulling up, going up, stayed with me for the rest of my lives to this day. It was extremely clear in that regression. I also wore rings at the time which mirrored the vibration of each level. So that was one of the things that I remember at that time. I was sitting in a chiropractor's office just prior to taking the Akashic Record training from Mary Parker. And when people would walk in front of me, I could feel their feelings. I knew something about them. It was not the story of what would happen next. It was not what was a name in a prior life. It was more about how they felt inside. Sometimes it was from something that felt past, but I could tune in, and sometimes I would shudder or I'd get chills, but I could perceive it. I can't say if I saw it or not. So they would open, and then I would sort of withdraw. That kind of withdrawal was also part of me, and still is sometimes. Going back to the life in Egypt, what was very interesting is that although I was well treated, I did not have what would be called today a normal life. There was no intimacy, there was no family, there weren't even close friends. You were isolated, but you had a role. Now, if you tune in right now to yourselves, if you have had exceptional experiences, near-death experiences, out-of-the-body experiences, you probably have a sense that you have a role to play, a mission, but you feel isolated. You feel isolated, like there's a thick barrier that won't allow you to step out. That's an illusion. The illusion is created in order to support you being human in the life you have known prior to the experience. It is an illusion in that you're holding a memory. It's not how you are anymore. And you can let it go. and you can get assistance to let it go, because you have come into the realization of such tremendous divine love in order to create this distinctive, custom-designed event for your soul. Think of it. Think of the miracle of it. Really. No one can have your experience and feel it in the depth that you do. No one. Not one other being will come into your capacity to feel. Feel that. And then also know this. Those of you who have had this experience, as well as everyone else in the room, the variety of experiences, are having your hearts expanded now for the next step. It is very pronounced in Roz's case. The light that you saw is a reflection of the golden chambers of your heart. And they're being opened and expanded so that you can rise to the next step. This is true of the man from Milwaukee, too. I don't know where he is. You're going to speak of your love in new ways. People want to hear this love. They don't want to hear about the problems. They don't want to hear about the baggage. That's not what they need anymore to evolve. One of the important messages that I'm given in the moment is that after you've had these experiences, find a healer that you feel very, very good with, and you have to once again realign the energy systems, the chakras and all the energetics around them. They are to be realigned, and there are sometimes, if you had physical things go on that brought you there, like a physical near-death experience, there are tears, there's a diminishing here, you're tilted. Get that into the ordinary alignment of the chakra system and energetics. The one you had before, a good, clear alignment, step one. Step two is that you are going to be realigned. The calibration of all of your chakras and your systems are going to hold frequencies that are higher, and they will go up for ascension. It's now. The time is now. There's no more time. In 2 years, the Great Ascension happens, 2012. And it will happen before. It happened already to you. But now, there's no difference between your soul and the physical. We hold the illusion. We have a collective illusion. When we dissolve the illusion, we will be like beings animating physical form as we experience it in the present. It will be different. You've walked through the door already. We're running on past momentum. You see, we have the illusion from past momentum. And those who are still functioning based in the former mode are being, I use the term catapulted off the planet. In the book I talked about Bernard Madoff. What an illusionist. I mean, you have to hand it to him. It's very interesting when you walk. I actually live near the place he lived in, Palm Beach. We will walk by there. The front of it is very nondescript. You don't even know what was in there. Boy, was he good at that. We don't need to hold on to that illusion. It crumbled. It crumbled for him to find spirit. He has the opportunity now to find spirit, because no physical thing worked out for him. No thing worked out for him. What I'm saying here is you don't have to make small talk when you hit the jackpot. I just hope that this is really heard. It's not a cliche to say that you are loved in a way that you've only barely tapped into. It's not only angels here, Diane. We have masters here. You have plenty of support from other people. It's a willingness to see your capacity, not your feelings. Your feelings are the symbols of your capacity, your divinity. And how deep are the sentimental feelings? How deep are they? Profoundly deep. And beyond that is divinity. The supernal heart is what makes us tick. How do we know this? We know it because, number one, we know it because of the people in this room, for sure. But we know it because we come from a spiritual template. The template manifests, and upon that, spirit infuses into form, creating matter. You can see spiritual templates easily in plants. You can see it before the bud occurs, and you can see it if you cut a flower. If you cut a flower or a leaf from a plant and take it against a black or white wall, you'll see the outline. There's no plant, there's no leaf there anymore. What is that? You can all see it if it's called to your attention. It is the etheric projection. And incidentally, I use the term etheric, meaning a higher level, and astral is level 4. But it comes from the etheric. It comes from that high plane, and it's projected through all the layers into the astral layer, which is 4, and 3 is the physical. So we have this template that is running our lives, and yet we sort of work backwards. We make small talk. How are you? What happened to you? Oh, that's nice. But not what happened to you and what's inside of you. And then it goes into a simpler message. This is what I'm bringing to you. This is what I have to share with you. And then it goes into, this is my being. This is how I am to my core, to my soul. That's the message that you are all bringing. You are bringing forth these messages. Do not hesitate, because when you speak the truth, people will listen to you. You don't even have to give the story. You don't have to give the luggage. You don't have to give the baggage. You don't have to give, listen to what happened to me. You have to give what's behind it. You have to hold what's behind it and let it animate your being. This is the legacy that you have been given. You are here to bless yourselves and others with your legacy. When you lose life and come back to this life, you may not want to come back because this is the thick of it. But you come with the animation and the empowerment of the vital spirit, the living spirit. You are the living spirit. You have decided not to remain in spirit. You've decided to live here. And glory in it. Glory in that truth. During a rebirthing session, I took my rebirthing sessions in the water, my breathing. I left and went back to before I was born. And I was escorted before the drop. I was escorted by two wonderful, huge beings that held me on each side. And then it was like you blank out. It's like a blank out and you drop. And when I woke up, I thought that the doctors and the people in the operating room would be like these masters who were escorting me, and I was surprised when they weren't. And I thought, boy, I've been tricked. I've been tricked. They're not behaving the same way. And I lived with that until I was 50 years old. And then I realized I did have a lot of loving people, and I went into forgiveness about it. And I understood that I was to remember that love, to bring it forward. And then there was a healing. The feeling of that height was very much like something else that happened to me. I went for darshan. Now, in my book, everything I say in the little parables, there are 3 vignettes. They're all true, but they're intermeshed with myself and clients. So that there's no singular profile, really, even though they're symbols. The book is a transmission, a vibrational transmission, incidentally. It's all symbolic. So, in darshan, which Rosemary Swanson gave me, she does it by transference through the eyes. When I went into that, I ascended out of the body, and I was held again. I was held by a male escort, and I flew with this escort, and I was flying in the world of total compassion. I'm sure some of you have been there. You've been there. With what you were saying from the divine, and then I dropped and fully know it. You infuse that with the layer of compassion, the divine love, and all the other feelings stemming from divine love. Everything stems from compassionate love of the divine. Everything. Evil. Evil goes through all the levels to be resurrected, so to speak, back to divine love. It's extremely solid and congealed at that point, or concealed, depending on how you want to say it. Anyway, I was flying, and I could see myself as a slave. I could see myself in Russia as a slave, and I actually wanted to call out and say, no, this is how it is, not that. Don't identify with that. I see your suffering, and I wanted to heal that, and I believe I did go back and heal that. Then I saw another interesting thing. I saw myself as someone in an upper class, like a royalty class, during the time of the plague. So it didn't really matter what class she was in, because that was a classless thing. Everybody was subject to the plague. And what I did in that life was try to, soap has been around a long time. I tried to wash everything clean, and then I would buy things. More things. I won't die if I have more things. And I wanted to shout out, no, you're going to die. You have the plague. More things won't stop the plague. But love, I'm here, you're there, it's me. Someone in the lobby was talking to someone. I overheard one piece as a spiritual message. And the person was saying, I'm sure you're out there, you'll recognize, and he said, I don't believe in past lives, I believe in one life. Who was it? Who said that about half an hour ago? I eavesdropped. You said it. I want to tell you that there's one life. It's all one life. It's all one. You have expressions where you come into the experience of separation. And at any time, you can go up and communicate with the other expression. We've done work like that in the records, and there are other healers who do that at any time. And many of the feelings that you have today are founded in your past expressions. If they are uncomfortable and don't align with your inner divinity, you can forgive and release them to bring them into alignment. Forgiveness is part of grace. And what it simply means, not that you have to have the highest vision in the world, it simply means that you'll let go a little bit and let an endless force come in a circle, and an endless force come in to recreate it in divinity, which is compassionate love, supernal love. That's all. That's what it means. You don't have to analyze it. In the 1990s, we laid groundwork for the lineage that I follow with the Akashic Records. We had huge classes. The president of the organization that I'm with, I'm one of the founding members, was one of the original students in our classes. My sister and myself, we were selected by someone named Mary Parker, who was my teacher. Many of the books written about the Akashic Records and other institutes, not the ARE, not the Edgar Cayce lineage, but there are many people out there who came from those original classes. I was not aware that I was laying these foundations at the time whatsoever. I went because I was totally engrossed in the work. So we went, and we also went into South America. We were invited in an interesting way to move into South America. There are institutes there now in the Akashic Records. One of the big ones is with Gabriela Hernandez of Argentina. Other teachers have stayed with our organization, and then there are some other ones too. When I was in South America, Gabriela took us to an area of Argentina, in the area of Los Terrones. It's near the small town of Calpiche del Monte. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it that well. And we were introduced to various people at that time. We went into the mountains, and in our various journeys in these mountains, we attuned to ships of light, physical ships of light, not physical, but they were in light in the sky. These ships, which would be called spaceships in light, come to us from the great hierarchies of the cosmos. They are the great brotherhoods and sisterhoods that have been here for ages. These ships change frequency. They work in frequency of light. And they are stored not in the sky, although that's where we see them. They're stored in the etheric layers of the earth in different frequencies. And they have been here a very long time. These were tremendous adventures for us. We met with a woman named Betty Acoglanis of Argentina, whose husband became a transmigrated soul, changing positions in his soul with the captain of one of these ships. So the captain could come to Earth, and his name was Angel Acoglanis, could be on the ship. Angel Acoglanis was eventually shot. He remains to this day on the ship. So after he was killed, we went with Betty to see the ships, and when she signaled to Angel, the ship signaled back. We went all day into meditation, and I was reminded something I had forgotten when I heard the flute today. The first meditation we did in the mountains was to integrate energy, various levels of energy, and then we saw some ships during the day to attune to us, and we were brought back by a Native American flute that Betty's friend was playing at the time. One evening, we had a tremendous experience in the mountains. We thought that it was a very quiet evening, and when we were driving out in our cars already, there were 6 of us altogether, a massive ship about the size, it would be the size of a football field, if you saw it. It was taking up about 1/3 of the entire sky, hovered above us. It had concentric oval circles, some in nothingness, like around Saturn, but they were black, nothingness in the light, light, nothingness. And it stayed. And I want to tell you the fantastic thing was that out in the country where we were in the mountains, you can see all the stars, or what you think are stars. Every one of those stars out there, they weren't stars. They flew in concentric circles around this ship. And then they flew in and out of it. That's what we saw. But we did a lot of meditation to attune, to let the beings on the ship and the ships know that we were there. It was a phenomenal experience, and there was no fear. There was no fear. Fear didn't exist. We welcomed them. And what happened with the ship is it didn't fly away. The ships don't fly away. They hover. Then it went to as far as we could see on the horizon, and then it disappeared. It also hovered above us at one point, and it became visible and invisible because it changed its frequency beyond what we could see. That's how it works. You're in the frequency or you're not. It doesn't go somewhere. It was an extraordinary experience at the time. Later, at the end of the 90s, we went back to another location, and it was very instrumental for me because I was about to come back to performing. There's a certain language that you use to call the ships. The language is called Irdin. This language has sounds in it that are reminiscent of certain other languages. One of the languages it sounds like is a Hawaiian dialect, a Huna type of dialect. And you're supposed to say these specific chants to bring the ships in a certain frequency. Now the ships have a variety. They come from different vortexes of energy. One of them, incidentally, one of the vortexes is called Mistitlan, and it's in Peru, where healing is. There's another one that is outside of an ashram in Brazil called Figueira. That's a healing center in a certain frequency. So this was a different experience because these ships, it was almost like they did a parade for us. Really, we saw colors, orbs of colors kind of on display, marching by. And then in the distance, there was an entire, like a city of lights. But there was no city, it was up in the sky. So Gabriela said, well, sing to them. Sing to these ships. And I thought, sing to the ships? You know, what are you talking about? So I started singing, and the ships came closer. The ships wanted to make contact. I want to tell you that that changed my life. I figured if ships wanted to make contact to hear what I have to sing, maybe there'll be some people too. So it was very inspirational. This was part of the synchronicity of the times. And it laid a foundation for a lot of things to be born and move forward. The ashram of Figueira is owned and was founded by a man named Trigoinho. Do you know of him? He's the original soul that made contact with Dr. Akoglanis. And he founded the ashram, and part of what he teaches are the teachings of Sri Aurobindo. Now, Sri Aurobindo was a contemporary, a lot of you may know this, he was a contemporary of Mahatma Gandhi, but he was not a pacifist originally. He was a fighter. When he received divine revelation in Pondicherry, he was wanted for life imprisonment, I believe, by the English government. But he was not a revolutionary anymore because he had become enlightened. At the time, Pondicherry was owned by the French, so the English couldn't touch him, and he remained there until he died because no one could touch him there, and he founded one of the most progressive forms of yoga on the planet, and the Divine Mother, Mira Alfaz, was his spiritual wife. What he taught is what we're seeing now in the out-of-body experience, and these people had a lot of out-of-body experiences. It's that the chakras would migrate to one side and their frequencies would shift to go upwards, higher frequency, so that the whole of humanity would ascend. This organization is just the first step to thousands of people who will come who experience this calibration up, this new manifestation with the spirit. But now, will not be the physicality you've known or any of us have known. So I urge you to go to people that you trust to do energy work, because that is shaping your physical experience. Likewise, the physical shapes the energy. When you do anything based on tone, very important, tone or the light frequency, something that gives you more light, or sound, the sound current or the divine utterances, you will calibrate up. And the lower octaves, which are related to anger, resentment, that will be transformed because they're of a certain frequency range. You can feel this in other people's auras. You can go and feel, if you go even very close and have them think of something, if you're a student even of science of mind, a teacher, that you can feel the thoughts, you get it, or your own, and what it does to you. It's frequency, it's light, it's tone. It's impacting the spiritual template that you have from before. So be sure you surround yourself with people who will support you on your journey. It will be easier, and there will be those who will challenge you because they're waiting for the word. They're waiting for your truth in a way that touches their heart and brings them back to their original innocence. They were innocent when they came in. They were aligned with divinity. Now I'd like to go into the Akashic records and describe them a little bit, which is where I focus my work. The Akashic record is the recording of all beingness, all there is. Akasha means primary substance, that out of which all things are formed. Now here's the little twist on it. It also is the primary field of creation. Therefore, it records and creates simultaneously. So you can go with the traditional kind of definition, like a book of life as an example, God's remembrances, all of that. You can give that as a definition. But it also is creating. So it has this tremendous ability to be worked with. You can let go. You can be very much at one with God in what you want to create, what you want to let go, how you want to love your life, how you want to love the world. It's all available to you. In my lineage, we work by permission. I use a sacred prayer that was taught to me by Mary Parker. She received it from a man named Johnny Prochaska, who is not living anymore. And I am in her lineage. We ask for permission to go into the Akashic Records. We ask a question to direct our focus in a certain field, in the field to get a certain focus, and we zero in, and we give forward the information that Spirit brings forward. The alignment of the energy is that our crowns are very extended, and the heart opens, the inner heart opens, and that's where the energy is seated. We have the blessings of masters, teachers, and loved ones of the Akashic Records who will work with us. They are magnificent, expansive consciousnesses that will be relaying information as well as however we receive it. They are not personalities in that sense. So we don't call their names out. That's not part of it. They work so closely that at times it's part of you. The Akashic Record of the soul is the soul's journey since a sense of individuation has occurred. You know, I've given the definition like that for 20 years, but actually, since you're part of divinity, it's your awareness of self in the soul. Since you've had something, you say, these are my expressions, these are my experiences, and we go into the soul area. That's done by permission. Every thought, word, deed, action, feeling is vibrantly reverberating in it. And we can move into that. I used to call it a field of light. And then I read Ervin Laszlo's book and realized that the Akashic field is faster and more refined than light. And I agreed very much with the book. That's also what I got in the records. And he uses the example that our galaxy actually is matched one side to the other. He said, well, you couldn't have done it by light because it wouldn't be there on one side yet. It had to be a finer field that it's coming from. Now, I'm going to open the floor for questions. Does anyone have any questions about what I've said? Yes.
In the beginning, you spoke about that you could feel others as they felt.
Yes.
When you were near them. How you would perceive it and you would withdraw.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
That's a good question. Okay, so the question on the floor is, in the beginning, I talked about how I would perceive how others felt, and I would feel it, and I would withdraw. When I felt it, I didn't know what to do with it, for one thing. And the other thing is that I would get very chilled from it. It wasn't a real good feeling, but it was intriguing. Sometimes it was just intriguing, but it also felt like I was intruding. So I would not know how to shape that. I didn't know what that was. So it was like a mixed reaction. This attitude about withdrawal and the why is a very important question for me. It's something I still face today. There are people who do not know that I do this. It's not like it was at certain times of my life. And that comes from a feeling of persecution for being the way I am. That's why I feel so strongly. That's probably the way I'm predisposed to feel and see the beauty of the experiences that you have shared earlier this afternoon. You have a message that transcends doctrine. Doctrines were made up to actually help people get closer to God. And they were good for that reason. The opposite has evolved with some of it. There should be no, if you say, I feel great love, there should not be a person who comes to you and says, but you don't feel it the right way and it should be called blah, blah, blah. No, I am close to God in my love. Had I had that vibrating in my body, I would have been, the next step should have been, I'm grateful to God that I see the feelings of this person. Maybe there's a good reason. I may not know the reason now, but I will find the reason. The reason was I was being brought closer to the records at the time. And this is about 1989, 88, before I went on that path. But your question is an important question, because there are people who have a self-judgment. It's always a self-judgment. I don't want to tell anybody what happened to me. I don't want to tell anybody how deeply I feel. What will happen if I do? What will happen if you do? Does anyone have that fear? What will happen if you do? I'm going to come out here.
I've been going through some deep emotional situations that I'm trying to figure out. It has something to do with my Kundalini and my chakras, and everything is like, it's just not going the way normally it should be going right now. I have lost my appetite, I can't eat, I can't, my dreams are way out there, make no sense at all.
Do you do any work with healers?
Not right now.
If you could do a work with the healer, because you have to get the divine breath going, especially into your heart and throat.
Yeah, I had a quadruple bypass.
Yeah. So your heart, if you even healing touch, the energy of the heart is torn. You have to have that worked with. And it will help you here and it'll help you in the back of the heart.
Oh, okay.
It has to be restored. And then the throat has to open up so that it's fluid, and then breath, heart, throat.
So my energy just scattered?
Well, this is what I'm identifying in the moment, so that you can align a little better. And this is important if you're in the medical profession. As surely as there's an operation on the physical body, you have to be healed energetically to match the healing. So you're asked to be done. I'm not going into the causes of the condition originally with the physical heart. But work should be done to match the healing on the finer frequencies with the heart, so that at least you can feel secure in this life, in the physical life. Supported. Okay. Roz.
Yes, I have a question about, there's a lot of talk now about manifesting your life's desire, your heart's desire,
I wrote a book about
all those things. First of all, I want to say I so agree with everything that you said. I really appreciate that call. But what I was talking with someone during the break about, we each have kind of a karmic beginning to this life, let's say. and in bringing forth anything that you want to manifest. There has to be, well, Susan Weishart has, and she's spoken here before, talks about aligning, with your soul's purpose. And once you do that, then it becomes much easier, or at least somewhat more clear, how you can manifest in your life those things that you desire. And I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that you wanted to share.
There are lineages where you come in with parents, for instance, a man who's angry. If your father was a man who's angry, and you take on it isn't that you deliberately take it on. Now, you chose him as a father from the soul perspective. There's no question. You tuned right in. There's no question. But what happens is the way the child learns is they energetically map it. They don't have to think about it. It's right. It's mapped in, so that when you go to free yourself, you can't run it by the conscious mind necessarily and free it up, because that'll be the last place you get it, because it's running throughout the system, especially in the heart. And anger, especially when it's taken on, because you can't. What happens is it'll trigger anger at other things, but you can't get to the source of the anger. What happens is it robs you of your divine innocence. Your divine innocence revels in the joy of being one with God. It's the symbolism for it is the fall from the Garden of Eden. You're in oneness with all of life. There's no duality. What would move the anger, which isn't yours, there are prayers in grace that we use, grace of God, giving it over to grace, something, rests in about that's where you breathe from. And it's from that breath that you open the outer layers of heart and move into the inner layer of the supernal heart, the inner chamber. The supernal heart is the area of heart that is beyond sentimental depth. It's universal truth. In other words, I said it earlier, we can have profound feelings and attachments that we adore. We love them, we want them always. A memory of a grandparent that we loved. Not minimizing that in any way. You will manifest from that. But there's a greater one, which is the supernal heart, which when contacted gives you cosmic truth. It is beyond time. It gives and receives at the same time. The frequency of grandmother, your mother or grandmother was it when she came in through the light?
It was my grandmother.
When your grandmother, think of what she did. She had to decrease her frequency and re-walk the channel of light and come back to you. The same path that took her up, she said, I'll come back down and love you. And it was enough love to transform your life. So she was somewhere where there was so much greater love that even to do transforming love for you, she had to decrease and go back in her path. Think of it. Think of being contacted. Those of you who are inspired to receive messages at any other plane of reality. If they want to reach you in love, and most of them want to reach you in love, those souls have to lower their frequency to get to the level of love that will transform you. Then go back to the level of love that they're in. I'm speaking of very positive experiences. Not speaking about a soul that can't find the way up. I'm speaking about someone who has a transformative, loving message for you, as in this case with Roz. If you want to manifest your true identity, you must be aware of the frequency of that love through the core of breath at the base of the diaphragm, which is the cosmic breath. It's the place where you feel like God is breathing you. God is breathing you. And from that place you enter the golden chamber of love, which is the cosmic heart. It is not emotional. It is deep truth. From that place to manifest, you bring that through the dense layers. You make a plan as to what you're going to say, what's being brought forward to you to start to manifest from that depth. If someone were to look at you, they would think you're working very hard and you're very disciplined when you're manifesting from that place. Your inner experience is one of joy and absorption. How could you be doing anything else? I'm free. Because you're repeating, you're spending long hours, you don't care if you sleep. But from that place, you have a sense of arrival. There is no other path. That's what happened to you. And you can turn around and do the same thing and manifest from the same place. That is profound abundance. Anything else? Was there anybody else? Yeah, let me go out here. Oh, I have to stay down in the front. Okay, so the person will stand up and then I'll repeat the question again. Sorry. Okay.
I just wanted to know if the Akashic records, are they actually with the individual at all times? And does that mean that you could tell a person of their previous lives? Is it recorded in that way?
So the question is, are the Akashic records with you at all times? And does that mean you can tell a person about a previous life? Is it recorded in that way? Is that correct?
Correct.
The Akashic records exist in a transcendent field. They are vibrationally encoded in the subatomic level of your cells. They are in the brainwave frequencies where you tune into transcendence, that your sense of self bridges into the other. So you are in touch with consciousnesses of a higher order that also protect the information while still having it inside of what is called self. This will bring up a lot of questions about what is self. Work has been done by Dr. James Hart in a very interesting way. He's the head of the Biocybernaut Institute. One of my students, Laura Lynn, has founded her own school some years ago. She had a student go to work with Dr. James Hart, who works with HaloSync. If you're familiar with that, that's the popular one. But he works with a lot of famous people about brainwave frequency and how to do meditation and advanced meditation and manifestation. And he was working with someone, Ann Jenkins is her name, I believe. In the brainwave frequencies, they went into a certain frequency range, a combination, And then she went back to her normal waking consciousness. And he said to her, what happened to you? And she said to him, I was in the Akashic Records. And he said, how do you know? She said, well, I took this course with Laura Lynn, and the masters are the same, everything's the same. The information that I have always received is the same. That's where I was. So he measured the brainwave frequency of the Akashic Record entry when the brain can record it. He measured that. What we find that it's transcendent. In other words, she was able to contact other types of consciousnesses in that state for guidance. But still, it was recorded inside of her. Because in classes, I've heard many times, what do you mean I have to ask permission if it's inside of me? That doesn't make sense to me. And we say, yes, you do have to ask permission. And basically, it's all coming from the divine, but it's stepped through, just like there are angels and guardians or guides. There are those who are the consciousnesses that, so to speak, keep or are with the Akashic Records to keep it sacred. There's a sacredness, a deference that we work with when we access that level. So that's part of the answer. The other part is absolutely you go into past lives if it's relevant for your spirit. You can do a consultation where there are no past lives. You can do a consultation where it's all about past lives. It depends. So both are true. Depends what's needed in the spirit and the person at the time.
So therefore, are you saying that it's not visible around me, it's within me, the Akashic Record?
Yes, I'm saying that it is not visible. It is within you, number one. Now the second part, I can't say, I have to rephrase the second part. The second part was, you're not saying it's all around me. The Akashic Records run through all the levels. Causal, astral, ethereal, mental. It runs through all the levels, vibrationally. Therefore, energetically, it's inside of you. It's also all around you at times. Healers go into the Akashic Records. They don't have the intention necessarily of staying in that frequency. They move through the auric field to do work, and they'll pick up certain things, some at the level of the records and some at other levels. Astral, there are astral records. There are other types of records. They're not the Akashic Records exactly. So this idea of inside and outside, when you get into energy work, what's inside is also outside.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for asking the question.
This is a practical question. Why would one or any individual...
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Was it...
That's right. I'll get to the next person.
Oh,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. If I was taking up anybody else's space, please...
That's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. And mine is a very practical question. Why would one want to access the Akashic Records for themselves?
We use it in depth. Oh, the question is, why would one want to access the Akashic Records for themselves? It gives you a perspective and depth of information that might not be available to you from your conscious mind. Sometimes it is completely different. Sometimes it's the same but deeper. We teach it with the journaling process. So as you want to deepen your work in your personal journal, then you open the records and ask the same question, for instance. You go back and forth in dialogue, you get new information that may not have been available to you in depth. So that's for yourself. It does give you direction, profound direction. Usually we're much more critical and judgmental of ourselves than when we work in the records. In the records you will get a lot of support. Self-judgment is one of the harshest limiting factors of a person's life. it really stifles creativity. If you can give judgment over to divinity, but even then you'll find that divinity is not going to give that kind of judgment. It's man-made. Thank you for asking the question. Okay, let me go back here because now it's your turn. Okay.
Okay, could you speak a little bit more about DNA and how you use the Akashic records to reconstruct or realign the DNA? And that's the first part of that question. The second part is, I don't know if this is scientifically correct or not, but I am told that at one point we had 12 strings in our DNA and we now have 2. I don't know if that is significant with the reconstruction or rebuilding or problems that we now have with our DNA. I don't know. So.
There are 2 parts to the question. Let me go back to the first, and then I may have to ask you about the second. The first part is, how do the Akashic records work with DNA? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. In the Akashic records, we have something called grace points. We use grace with 2 or 3 grace points when we work with the Akashic records, because it is a much purer way to work with it. Now, the grace points can be used outside of the Akashic records. A few of them align with the vibrations in the DNA. One of them is this point. It releases various beliefs and emotions down to the cellular level in the DNA. Press here. That might be revealed in the Akashic records as to what that is. But this is what you use, right here. That's one of them. It's an advanced grace point. It's between these 2 fingers, and these 2 fingers, you know, Dr. Spock used to use that. They're also used to bless people, called the priestly blessing in Kabbalah. It releases down to the DNA, right down here, keeping you from their soul, and they're highly loved most of the time. And some of the time they're valuable because they allow you to work with certain groups of people. So they're not necessarily a bad thing. They allow you to go out into the world in certain ways. The inner levels come from your authentic self. What you want to do with the vibration of the DNA is align it to the authentic soul self that will now serve you. You chose the DNA that served you at one time, or something you needed to know about to be something important. You chose the DNA line for a reason. But now it may not serve you in the same way. So we ask for the grace of God to come in and transform it for your next step, for your present. That's how it works. What was the second part of your question? Oh, the number of strands.
Yeah.
The number of strands is changing in the DNA. It's going to be altered by these other energetic works that are being brought forward for the next step. That's the information I'm given. They are changing. I know that they're changing. But it's one of the last things to change as far as the physical anchor, the root, the basic root of being physical. The DNA is pretty basic. So it's formulated to keep you in the physical, and will change when your path is very clear in all the other ways overall, as far as the strands. That's what I get on it at this time. That's my answer at this time.
I was wondering if you've read any of the research of Michael Newton, who's a psychiatrist who's done a lot of work during people's regressions about how the souls began and then what happens in between lifetimes.
I'm not shown how the souls began. I have more of a grasp experientially between lifetimes. There are incarnations that are between what we would call a whole lifetime between lifetimes.
Right.
There are incarnations where you have a whole experience, not in the physical, not even close to the physical. That's much more available. The origination of the soul is not as revealed. He's doing groundwork research on it, and I'm not going to comment. I'm not given the comment at this time to answer you on that. I don't recall his work, though.
Okay, I've read many, many books over the years, and I found his to be quite fascinating. And I know Susan Weishart has been here before, and she's done training under him for between life regressions. So I
Between life is a much more known area, right? Yes.
I'm questioning, I came in a bit late, this is a topic that interests me, about the Akashic Records. I understand that it is a total recording. However, my question is, past, present, does it also include possible future manifestations?
This is a great question. It's like you came from heaven with the question. I understand. She's asking about the Akashic Records, past, present. Does it include future? Is that the question?
Possibles.
Possibles, and that's how we say it. The Akashic Record absolutely does include the possibility of the future. What I gave you today were possibilities of the future. And do they get created on the way to that future? The answer is they could. So you're given the possibility, to my level, I'm given possibilities for people. It's very important that you not predict the future for people because it could cause various reactions in them where they will shift into a mode that would not be beneficial. But giving them possibilities for a future. Let me say that when you work with the records, it's almost always positive. I've had people sit down and say, okay, tell me the worst. Tell me what's going to happen. I can take it. I can take it. And you're sitting there saying, what are you talking, you're thinking, what are they talking about? And then you go into this, what they're holding from the past that made these judgments occur. You're given possibilities to ascend, to go into a high level. Therefore, you're given something extremely positive as a possibility. The possibility of transformation, the possibility of ascension. All of those are given to people, an unfoldment that is absolutely tremendous. So possibilities can be given to people. Yes?
I'm just wondering about, aren't we externalizing too much and taking us away from us? Because basically we are thought-provoking entities. Thoughts run our lives, but we control our thoughts. So if this is a reality in which we live in, then the more we externalize, then we are losing ourselves in the external unknown rather than in the known which is within us.
This is a very important question. And I'm going to summarize the question because you had a lot of area that you covered in your question. If we are externalizing and speaking about this so much, aren't we diminishing, is that the right way of putting it, what is inside, internal? The answer is that the inner realms bring us closest to divinity. That's part of the answer. The inner realms bring us the journey through all of the worlds. It's very true. And they're inside, they're projected inside, or they're created. The key here is creation. In manifestation, when we bridge what is perceived as internal through even a meditative bridge to the external, we can anchor it in the physical dimension. We receive profound information in the inner realms. We manifest from the inner realms. We bridge this into the manifest world, and then we can anchor it through symbolism. The manifest world is a symbolic world. That's why it's called illusion sometimes. However, in the inner realms, we are in constant creativity. There is no time other than this moment, this moment, this moment. Any moment you can create. By externalizing that creation into the physical material world, you allow more creation to come inside. You become fuller and you manifest more. It's when you stop it, you will be held by some point in the past. So that force is working with us now. Let me also point out, in another school of thought, though, you must remain silent in your manifestation till the time is right. That's another school of thought. What is happening very much now is this really a surge to create. Go in, be silent, receive, create. Do meditation. At that point, you will be given the information to externalize and bridge. Anchor it into the physical, because you have another level just waiting to fill you again. You are always fulfilled. It is the nature of the spiritual template and world to be fulfilled.
I don't understand. It's taking me away from you. I don't like it.
It does not take you away from you, it gives you more of you.
No, it's taking me away.
Okay, then you better not do it.
There's an author by the name of Golden. He had a simple recipe how to get in touch with your soul person. Think this is your last day on this earth.
Mm-hmm.
What would you do?
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, everything disappears except you. And it is within that you, then you begin to manifest what you are. That you waited all your life to waste it. You didn't manifest all your life. But in that one day, when you have to face that reality, not just a near-death experience, but real possibility of a death within a day, then you get in touch with that soul that has been yearning to come out from within you all your life.
Well, that's true. Did you hear this?
No.
He was quoting Golden's book, who said that if it's a simple way to do it, if this is the last day of your life, what would you do? At that moment, you will be very much in touch with you, and you will do what you will be very much you, and you will do what you have always wanted to do, because it's your last day. Now, I can't say I disagree with that, but what if there's more?
It's the greed of the more that is keeping us from benefiting what we have at this time.
The quest for the more is what's keeping us from benefiting what we have at this time. Being limitless is not limiting you. If you keep creating, if on my last day, I want to create the greatest painting that ever was, coming from my soul, and I do that, it will be so. I wanted to do this painting and give it to humanity, but what if it puts me in touch with greater creation by creating that painting? What if that happens? Do you at that time say, I don't want to go, I just realized there's more. It wasn't my greatest painting. I thought that was, what do you do? It's not, the quest for more is a problem. I want more. It's external, it's not the self. That's a problem. But the vastness has no limit. So you go in and you reach a layer of absorption to your authentic identity through your heart. You may be quiet or not. It depends how you manifest. It is not about striving. The heart is in a state of, the divine heart is in a state of receiving, oneness, and giving at all times. Beingness. You're talking about beingness. And I agree with that. You become a conduit for a flow. You're not limited in it. So I agree with what you're saying. This is another approach that I feel is as valid, or another attitude.
And the only thing necessary for that is that you trust yourself.
You trust yourself, yes.
If you don't and keep on externalizing that the answer is out there, you don't exist.
This is true. If you think, that's absolutely true. If you think the answer is out there, you don't exist. Absolutely true. That's not the same as bridging from the internal realm out to the world and anchoring more deeply within the flow of God. It's not static. The answer is not outside of yourself. Absolutely true. It's to completely honor the depth of self. What I said earlier was, no other being will ever feel the depth of your life but you. That is your soul. Your soul will feel the depth of your existence. That's very important. That's miraculous. But it is also true that the force is constantly in creation, within and without. That force will come from you, and you can't stop it. When you try and stop it, that's when you run into problems. It's living. It does keep creating. So this is true. What you say is absolutely true. The inner and the outer, what we call the inner and outer, which is interesting. The inner manifests, bridging out into the world, but it does not mean that you lose contact with your heart.
If the more that seems to belong with each life that I think I know about, it seems to have brought me a feeling of aha moments as to why I react or don't react or feel certain things, and it seems as though it's a connection to the past life. And I don't know if that makes any sense.
This can be very true. The question is, by knowing the past lives, I have it seems to be a high moment as to why I react or don't react. Well, that can be very true, because that may be coming from a past life. Yes, yes, that is something that could be true. Yes.
What is the connection between our DNA from our ancestors and our past lives? Are we the people who our ancestors were, or are we completely different?
Okay, that's a great question, and we look at it a lot in the records. The answer is both. The question is, what's the connection between our past lives and our ancestors, our hereditary ancestors from our DNA? Have we been our ancestors in a past life? The answer is yes. You have been your ancestors in a past life, and sometimes you were not. The soul does both. You chose this body for the imprints from your physical body had certain imprints from heredity. And you tuned in and chose it through attunement to come here. You might have been some of those ancestors. That's quite true. You might have the soul of an ancestor. Or you might not. Yes, sir.
You mentioned earlier about seeing ships.
Yes.
We all see on the internet a lot about actual ships coming and being witnessed by the masses, the large portion of the covenant. Do you think that's going to happen?
Well, I'd like to address it. What I'd like to address first is a little different. He said, do physical shifts being witnessed by the masses, do we think that's going to happen? Let me give you another visit that I made. I made a visit, quickly now I guess, to Uruguay, to the hacienda and ranch of a man named Senor Tonas. He's passed away since. On his property, there was also a huge sculpture of the famous healer, Padre Pia, who was tied in with various out-of-body experiences and ascensions and healings with other beings. And people still go on this property to pay homage to that statue of Padre Pia. Senor Tonas had a ship land on his property, a physical ship in what we call metal, a physical ship. What you need to know about Senor Tonas is that he was an interesting man. He could be very sensitive, but he was also very tough. He had been a pilot before he bought the property, and he was a rancher. He owned a lot of land, had a lot of animals. And if an animal did something he didn't like, he'd pick up the animal and he would throw the animal down. He was a rough man, and then he could be very gentle. The way we knew people who knew him, the way we got to see him was we brought him special cookies for tea time. So you had all these different sides to him. The ship that landed on Senor Tonas' property was a very massive physical ship. The Uruguay army was called out to try and shoot down the spaceship. The spaceship, through frequency, dismantled all the bullets in the machine guns. So they all fell out. So when the soldiers saw this, they ran in all directions. When the physical ship landed on his property, he went forward, and there was an invisible wall, a radioactive wall, which knocked him back and knocked his dog back. His dog has 3 legs. One was taken from being knocked back. The trees on his property where it landed became petrified in stone. There are animals that also became petrified in stone. Senor Tonas, all of his vital signs shot. He was taken to the hospital, and all the machines couldn't even measure. They went so crazy, they couldn't measure what was going on. He became partially paralyzed by it. The way these ships work is that the people who do the viewing, the frequency of the people, the encounter will somehow match them until a certain date. The hierarchies, and I haven't even gone into the hierarchies, and they're known by fragrances. Fragrances are fragrance is very important for experiencing spirit. It's a wonderful thing. Anyway, the senior
and touch us and do all these things.
Well, the information I've been given is to preserve the harmony of the cosmos, because some things we're doing are not harmonious. Trigolino, who has his ashram in Brazil, harmony, if we are to survive with the cosmos on all planes. And that's the mission of that group, and that's the group that I've been exposed to.
They have the power to eliminate us.
They have a treaty not to interfere, positive or negative. The hierarchies have a treaty. They won't exactly help all the time, but they won't interfere. There is that level to it. That's my understanding.
2012, what is going to happen?
The frequencies will be elevated, as I'm describing, the shocks, and there will be a plane, what we call physical, will be calibrated up to a higher dimension of light, and there will be greater love available. Everything will be calibrated up. That's what's going to happen. I think it's about time. I want to thank you. It was a great blessing. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a wonderful blessing to have you here. We are so blessed, as we keep saying and keep saying. But anyway, next month we're blessed with a senior producer from Oprah, Mr. John St. Augustine, who is a near-death experiencer. And we don't want to miss that, do we? No, no. So come join us at Ruby's if you want to continue the conversation. And we'll see you next month. Don't forget your trash.
Thank you.